If you are not paying attention to the storage temperature of your drums, you could be causing your own processing issues.
Hi, I'm Robert Ninety, your spray foam advisor and the guy in the Hawaiian shirt. I wear the Hawaiian shirt as a symbol of freedom and flexibility, something that all business owners should want to achieve. You know how most SPF contractors start their business because of their technical skills, but they have no plan for growth? There's no consistency because decisions in their business are made on the fly, they are just trying to get through the day, and they are spread too thin because they do everything themselves? Well, what I do is help SPF contractors like that measure profitability, identify the key activities that drive success in their business, and create a game plan that develops consistency and growth. Let's get into it.
Today, I want to talk to you about storage, specifically your storage temperatures. What temperature do you store your drums at? We all know that temperature is very important when it comes to spray foam processing, and storage temperature can be very critical, especially as ambient temperatures change throughout the year. If you are not paying attention to the storage temperature of your drums, you could be causing your own processing issues. Most manufacturers say that open cell foam generally works best when stored above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And for standard closed cell foam, the optimum storage range is typically in the 60 to 85 degree Fahrenheit range. Storage temperature is important because the chemical inlet temperatures directly affect the viscosity of the raw materials and the ability of those materials to mix inside the impingement chamber. If you've been paying attention in this industry, then you know as a liquid cools down, the material becomes more viscous, which means that the material gets thicker and thicker as temperatures drop. For example, as the resin drops in temperature, the viscosity increases exponentially, not linearly. Tests of one resin with a documented viscosity of 700 to 1100 centipoise at 77 degrees Fahrenheit show viscosities of about 2000 centipoise at 62 degrees Fahrenheit and a viscosity of 7800 centipoise at 47 degrees Fahrenheit. For reference, this would be like changing from the thickness of thick motor oil to honey to molasses as the temperature of the material drops. When the material is thicker, it is much more difficult for your drum pumps to draw the material from the drum and move it down the chemical lines to your proportioning pump. So the colder the material, the thicker it is, and the more difficult it is for your pumps to do the work necessary to get that material to and through the proportioner. How can you overcome this? Identify the optimum temperature range for your materials based on the manufacturer's recommendations, and then create a plan internally to maintain those drums in that temperature range throughout their life. When you precondition your material and make sure that it is at the optimum temperature from a storage standpoint, then you can mitigate a lot of processing problems. For example, when a material gets too cold, it can freeze. Resin can freeze, and while ISO doesn't quite freeze, it does something very similar called dimerizing, which means it creates dimers where the ISO molecules attach to each other and forms crystals inside the liquid. This is not exactly freezing, but it does create crystals inside the ISO, which can cause problems. This means that if a material gets close to freezing, there's a possibility that it can be ruined. If you think you have frozen material, the best plan of action is to contact the manufacturer to find out if there are any potential steps to salvage the material. Some manufacturers say yes, you can salvage the material by slowly increasing the temperature of the material by placing the drum in a warmer area, such as keeping the drum in a 70-degree area until the drum and the material inside reaches 70 degrees. But this can take a long time. However, other manufacturers say no, there's no way to reverse this freezing process and the material is lost. Talk to the manufacturers about the specific products you're working with. They can give you the best guidance on what to do if your material freezes or just gets too cold. The best way to handle this is to avoid it and not let your material freeze in the first place. Make sure you have a solid storage process, some way to keep the material within the proper storage ranges, both at your shop and on your rig. When we're talking about storage temperature, the main concern is the temperature of the chemical in the drum. The primary concern for SPF materials is the chemical must be heated to a certain point for the reactions to work properly. So it doesn't matter if the drum itself is warm, if the chemical inside it is not warm. That is not acceptable. The drums will have to continue warming until the material reaches proper temperatures. The best way to warm a drum is to leave that drum in an environment where it maintains a constant temperature, so the material inside will be about the same temperature as the drum and it will be good to go. But make sure you are measuring the chemical temperature and not the temperature of the outside of the drum. Yes, this happens. Someone puts a heater next to a drum to warm up the area. They come back to check and they use an infrared gun to read the temperature of the metal drum that's 6 inches away from where the heater is. And guess what? That metal is going to be hotter than the chemical inside the drum. Finally, it is important to remember that all heaters on proportioners have a maximum delta T that they will achieve when the chemical passes through the heaters. If you are processing on a smaller piece of equipment with smaller heaters, your equipment may only be capable of a 20 to 30 degree delta T across the heaters from inlet to outlet temperature. Some of the bigger machines with bigger heaters can achieve a greater delta T across the heaters, but you need to check the wattage of your heaters, talk to your equipment manufacturers, and find out what type of delta T you can expect from your specific equipment. The major consideration is that if the input material temperature for your rig is 60 degrees Fahrenheit and you have your equipment set at 140 degrees Fahrenheit, your equipment would need an 80 degree delta T to raise the chemical to 140 Fahrenheit. Most equipment setups are not capable of doing this. They cannot offer this high of a delta T because the material dwell time across the heaters is not long enough for the liquid to come out the other side 80 degrees higher than when it entered. These are some of the guidelines to think about when you are working with chemical temperatures and drum temperatures. Make sure that you store your drums in a good place so that you have workable chemical temperatures on your trucks and on your job sites. Otherwise, you could be causing some processing issues related to the storage of your drums.
If you found this video helpful, then it would probably be valuable to your friends in the spray foam industry. So help us all out and send it to 3 or 4 people that you know. Additionally, if you have any questions, want info on a specific topic, or want to learn how Spray Foam Advisor might be able to help you or your business, you can email us at questions@sprayfoamadvisor.com. This has been Robert 90, your Spray Foam Advisor, and the guy in the Hawaiian shirt. Thanks for checking this out, and catch me on some more videos.